My wife gets very upset when I do this. She said, darling, it's not presidential. I said, yeah, but people like it.
From imitating trans wrestlers in front of a rally to arguing with a journalist over basic mathematics, here are some of the most unhinged moments of Trump on the internet. Starting off today's video with our first clip where President Trump can't seem to embrace the concept of Photoshop and chooses to argue with a journalist instead.
I can't have a trial, a major trial for every person that came in illegally. We have thousands of murderers that came in. They're going to murder people. They already have murdered people in our country.
Right, so
we have to get them out, and we have to get them out fast.
Really bad guys, but in our country, even bad guys get due process, right?
If people come into our country illegally, there's a different standard. These are illegal. They came in illegally.
But they get due process.
Well, they get a process where we have to get them out. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the Venezuelans.
They get whatever my lawyers say. Those tattoos.
Oh, he had some tattoos that are interpreted that way. But let's move on.
Wait a minute. Hey, Terry.
He did not have the letter MS-13.
It says MS-13.
Yeah, that was Photoshopped. So let me
That was Photoshopped. Terry, you can't do that. Hey, they're giving you the big break of a lifetime. You know, you're doing the interview. I picked you because, frankly, I never heard of you, but that's okay. I picked you.
Moving on to our next clip, which brings us to the question, can an interaction between Trump and a CNN reporter ever be normal?
Sit down. Sit down.
Just because of the attack of fake news and attacking our network, I just want to ask you, sir.
I'm changing it from fake news, though.
Doesn't that undermine?
Very fake news.
I know, but aren't you?
Go ahead.
Real news, Mr. President. Real news. Aren't you concerned, sir, that you are undermining the people's faith in the First Amendment, freedom of the press in this country, when you call stories you don't like fake news? Why not just say it's a story I don't like?
I do that.
When you call it fake news, you're undermining confidence in our news media.
Here's the thing.
Isn't
okay,
that important?
I understand what and you're right about that, except this. See, I know when I should get good and when I should get bad. And sometimes I'll say, wow, that's going to be a great story. And I'll get killed. I know what's good and bad. I'd be a pretty good reporter, not as good as you. But if you go, as an example, you're CNN, I mean, it's story after story after story is bad. I won. And the other thing, chaos. There's zero chaos. We are running, this is a fine-tuned machine. And Reince happens to be doing a good job, but half of his job is putting out lies.
For someone with a stage presence and comedic timing as good as Trump's, he sure missed out on a stand-up comedy career.
All right, I'm in trouble when I get home, but that's okay. What the hell? I've been in lots of trouble before. But no, you look at the weightlifting where 18 years it stands, and they have this young woman, and her parents are right where you are in the front row, and they're so proud of her, and it's like 209 pounds, and she's going to lift that. The record stood for 18, think of it, 18 years, and they put 1/8 of an ounce here, and 1/8 of an ounce here, tiny little bit, and she's going to do it. Mom, I love you. I'm going to do it for you, Mom. And she goes, and she lifts, and she gets it, and Mom, I'm going to do it, Mom. Can't do it. And then a guy comes along, or a gal, or whatever. A transitioned person comes along. And he was a failed weightlifter as a man, but he comes along, 206 pounds. They put the little thing on, and he goes, boom, boom. And breaks the record like by 119 pounds. That's not right. The other one is the swimming. You've heard me talk about it. Great swimmers, and you know, they rose to the top. Women swimmers, and they grew up together. And they're Olympic class swimmers, and they're qualifying for some big tournament. And now the race is getting ready to start, the big race, and one young lady, she was going to set the record. She fought all her life to set the record. She has to win it by 1/9 of a second. Think of that, 1/9. I don't like those odds, 1/9 of a second, right? But she looks to the left and she sees all the friends that she grew up with down in California, from all over the country. They're all the best swimmers. Then she looks to the right and she sees the same thing, but there's a person next to her who's a giant. And she looks and she, oh my God, who is that? I don't recognize that person. That was a person.
If there's one thing Trump still hasn't learned after all these years, it's hesitation for sure.
And yet sometimes very beautiful. But the press is reporting the Democrats are starting to panic. They're panicking. They are panicking because, you know, the votes that are coming in very, very strong a certain way. I won't tell you what way that is, but Chuck Schumer is here looking very glum. Doesn't he look glum? It looks glum. But look on the bright side, Chuck, considering how woke your party has become. If Kamala loses, you still have a chance to become the first woman president. And I actually said, do you mind if I do that? And he said, no, you got to do what you got to do. He's a pro. He's a professional.
Not only is he a comedic icon, but the US president also happens to be a fashionista, claiming a garbage collector vest makes him look thinner.
And then I gave a little news conference from the front of the, you know, they asked their wise guy questions and everything. And then we drove about 2 feet. I got out, got into the plane. And then I got in the car and I'm driving over here and I have this still on. And I come into the arena and I say, where's my jacket? I want to get out of this thing. And they said, it would be unbelievable if you could wear it on stage. I said, and I said, no way. I got 25,000 people standing outside. I got all these people here. There's no way I'm wearing it on stage. They said, oh, okay, sir. I said, get me my jacket. But if you did, you know, it actually makes you look thinner. I said, ooh. And they got me. I said, I want to wear it on stage. When they said I look thinner, I said, in that case, I'll wear it on stage.
As we said earlier, Trump never really learned what hesitation is because there's no other explanation behind him saying stuff like this on a stage that people hesitate to say in front of friends. Turns out, journalists aren't the only ones on his hit list.
COVID. To be specific, COVID-19. That name gets further and further away from China as opposed to calling it the Chinese virus. By the way, it's a disease, without question, has more names than any disease in history. I can name Kung Flu. I can name 19 different versions of names. When you do testing to that extent, you're going to find more people. You're going to find more cases. So I said to my people, slow the testing down, please. They test and they test. We got tests if people don't know what's going on. We got tests. We got another one over here. The young man's 10 years old. He's got the sniffles. He'll recover in about 15 minutes. That's a case. Add up to it. That's a case.
Moving on to our next clip, only Trump can insult the iconic and extremely memeable laugh of his opponent, Kamala Harris.
Starting the day I take the oath of office, I will rapidly drive prices down and we will make America affordable again. Have you heard her laugh? That is the laugh of a crazy person. That is the laugh of a crazy. It's the laugh of a lunatic.
And for our last clip, we'll take a look at how Trump argued with yet another journalist over basic math. Does he even realize the weight of his actions? Of course, the tariffs are going to make everything more expensive than it already is. There is no arguing in that.
But it's the tariffs, right? We still have 145% tariffs on China.
is it-
Your Treasury Secretary said we basically have an embargo on China.
Look, you're
And
trying
that-
to say something's going to happen,
no,
Terry.
No, okay, well,
nothing's going to happen.
You know business.
Terry,
I want to ask you.
Terry, I do know business.
Yes,
and
so 145% tariffs on China, and that is
That's good.
basically
That's
an
good.
embargo.
They deserve it.
It'll raise prices on
They
everything
deserve
from
it.
electronics to clothing to building houses.
You don't know that. You don't know whether or not China's going to
That's
eat it.
mathematics.
China.
That's all for today, folks. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button and turn on the post notifications so you don't miss out on any new content.